I stood in the doorway of my own home, shopping bags hanging from my numb fingers, staring at the scene that would end my marriage. Through the living room window, I could see them clearly: my husband Blake, a woman I'd never met, and 2 children who had his exact smile. They sat around our dining table, the one Blake and I had chosen together 3 years ago, eating Christmas dinner like they belonged there, like I didn't exist. Blake's back was to the window, but I could see him gesturing animatedly, the way he did when telling stories. The woman laughed, touching his arm with casual familiarity. The little boy, maybe 7 years old, wore a Santa hat. The girl, younger, was reaching for more food while Blake said something that made them all laugh. My husband was spending Christmas with his real family. The family he'd told me didn't exist. I set the shopping bags down carefully on the porch, my hands steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. I'd driven across town to buy last-minute ingredients for the Christmas dinner Blake had promised to come home for. He'd texted 3 hours ago. Emergency at work. Might be late. Start without me. There was no emergency at work. There was just this, a second family. A second life. A complete betrayal hidden behind a wall of lies I'd been too trusting to see. Until 6 weeks ago, I pulled my phone from my pocket and took 3 photos through the window. Clear shots, undeniable evidence. Then I turned and walked back to my car with the same composed steps I'd used hundreds of times. To anyone watching, I was just a woman leaving her house on Christmas Day, not someone whose entire reality had just shattered. But that was the thing about shattered realities: sometimes you saw them breaking long before the final blow fell. And sometimes, if you were smart enough and hurt enough, you started preparing for the impact months in advance. A marriage built on lies doesn't end with confession, my grandmother used to say. It ends with consequences. I'd spent 6 weeks building consequences. Today, Blake would finally face them. I drove away from my house, our house, legally, though that was about to change, and headed toward the office of my attorney, Patricia Thornton. She'd be working today despite the holiday, waiting for my signal that phase 1 of our plan was complete. The signal that Blake had finally made his choice visible enough to document. Behind me, my husband continued his Christmas celebration with the wife and children he'd been hiding for years. Ahead of me, the legal machinery I'd been quietly assembling for 6 weeks waited to destroy the comfortable double life he'd been living. Blake thought I was the naive wife who believed his excuses and accepted his absences. He thought he'd successfully juggled 2 families, 2 lives, 2 versions of himself. He was wrong about all of it, and by tomorrow morning, he'd know exactly how wrong he'd been. 6 weeks earlier, I'd been exactly the trusting wife Blake believed I was. Maybe willfully blind, maybe just exhausted from my own demanding career as a hospital administrator. I worked 50-hour weeks managing operations for a major medical center. Blake worked in pharmaceutical sales, or so I thought, traveling frequently for regional conferences and client meetings. We'd been married for 8 years. Good years, I'd thought. We'd met at a medical conference where Blake's company was exhibiting. He'd been charming, attentive, ambitious. We'd married quickly, bought a house in a good neighborhood, talked vaguely about having children eventually. That eventually never quite arrived. Blake was always traveling, always busy, always promising that next year would be better for starting a family. I'd been disappointed but understanding. My career was demanding too. We had time, except time was something Blake had been spending elsewhere. I'd discovered the truth by accident, the way most devastating revelations arrive through a mundane detail that unraveled everything. It was November 10th. I'd been home with the flu, working from my laptop between naps. Blake had left that morning for what he said was a 3-day conference in Chicago. I'd been checking our bank account to pay bills when I noticed a charge from a grocery store across town, dated that same day. Hours after Blake's supposed flight had departed. My first thought was fraud. Someone had stolen our credit card information. I'd called the bank's fraud line, prepared to dispute the charge, when the representative mentioned the items purchased. Children's cold medicine, orange juice, crackers. The comfort foods you buy for sick kids. This must be fraud, I'd told her. We don't have children. I can dispute it if you'd like, she'd offered, but the signature on file matches your husband's. Would you like me to email you a copy of the receipt? I'd said yes before I fully processed what I was asking for. When the email arrived, I'd stared at Blake's signature, his distinctive scrawl with the unnecessarily elaborate B, and felt the first crack appear in my reality. Blake was in Chicago, except he wasn't. He'd been at a grocery store 17 miles from our house, buying medicine for children we didn't have. I'd spent the next 3 days functioning on autopilot, going to work, managing hospital operations, acting normal while my mind raced through explanations. Maybe he'd bought the items for a colleague's sick kids. Maybe he'd never left for Chicago but was dealing with some emergency he couldn't tell me about. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation I couldn't imagine. Then Blake came home from Chicago with stories about the conference, the meetings, the hotel. Detailed, convincing stories, lies, delivered with complete confidence. That's when I'd stopped looking for reasonable explanations and started looking for evidence. The evidence had been horrifyingly easy to find once I started looking. Blake wasn't careful because he'd never needed to be. I'd trusted him completely. Never questioned his schedule. Never checked his phone or followed up on his stories. He'd had 8 years to build a routine of deception with no consequences. I'd started with the credit card statements. Going back 2 years, patterns emerged immediately. Regular charges at the same grocery store across town, pediatric clinic visits, children's clothing stores, toy stores near Christmas and birthdays, restaurants in a neighborhood we never went to together. All of it explained away by Blake's supposed travel schedule. But when I'd cross-referenced the charges with his work calendar, which I had access to through the shared family calendar on our phones, the charges were all local. Made during days he was supposedly out of town. Then I'd found the second phone. Blake kept it in his car, tucked under the driver's seat. I'd discovered it one Saturday morning when he'd asked me to grab his sunglasses from the glove compartment. The phone had slipped forward when I'd opened the compartment, and I'd seen it before I could stop myself from seeing it. An entire second phone. For his second life. I'd left it there, hands shaking, and gone back inside with the sunglasses. That night, while Blake slept, I'd gone back to the car and photographed everything. The phone's lock screen showed a wallpaper photo. Blake with a woman and 2 small children at a beach. All of them smiling. A family photo. I couldn't access the phone itself, it was password protected, but I'd photographed the exterior, the model, the serial number. Everything that could establish it existed and belonged to Blake. Then I'd started following him. Not every day, I couldn't risk him noticing. But on Saturdays when he claimed to have meetings, I'd call in sick to my own commitments and trail him carefully. He'd go to a house in Maplewood, a suburb 20 miles from ours. A modest 2-story with a swing set in the backyard and a minivan in the driveway. He'd park, go inside, and stay for hours. Through windows, I could see the outlines of a family life. Blake playing with children, sitting at a table with the woman, the mundane domesticity of a Saturday afternoon. I'd taken photos, videos, documented dates and times, built a file that made denial impossible. The woman's name was Simone Patterson. I'd found that out through property records. The house was in her name. Single mother of 2, according to social media profiles I accessed through a fake account, except she wasn't single. She was living with my husband. Or I was living with her husband. The lines were blurry about who had primary claim. What wasn't blurry was the timeline. Blake's oldest child with Simone was named Caleb, age 7, which meant Blake had been seeing Simone for at least 8 years, the same 8 years he'd been married to me. He'd married me while already in a relationship with her, or maybe he'd married her too, I hadn't confirmed that yet, but bigamy was a possibility I couldn't rule out. Either way, Blake had spent our entire marriage lying to me about the most fundamental aspects of his life. After 3 weeks of investigation, I'd compiled enough evidence to destroy Blake's carefully constructed double life. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed a strategy. That's when I'd contacted Patricia Thornton. Patricia was a divorce attorney with a reputation for handling complex cases involving infidelity and financial deception. I'd met her through hospital board connections. She'd served as legal counsel on several healthcare contract negotiations. She was brilliant, ruthless when necessary, and completely uninterested in performing sympathy for clients. "Tell me what you know," she'd said during our first meeting, held at her office at 7 a.m. before I went to work. I'd taken the day's first appointment to avoid any chance of running into someone I knew. I'd laid out everything. The credit card charges, the second phone, the house in Maplewood, the woman and children. The timeline that suggested Blake had been living a double life since before our marriage. Patricia had listened without interrupting, taking notes in precise handwriting. When I finished, she'd looked up with an expression I couldn't quite read. "How do you want to proceed?" "I want a divorce. I want him to face consequences. And I want to make sure he can't do this to anyone else. Those are 3 different goals. Let's prioritize." She'd spent the next hour explaining options. In terms of divorce, the evidence of infidelity was overwhelming. We'd get a favorable settlement, likely the house, significant financial compensation, possibly alimony given Blake's betrayal. But you said you want him to face consequences beyond just losing assets, Patricia had noted. What does that mean to you? I want everyone to know what he did. I want his company to know he's been lying about his travel schedule. I want Simone to know I exist. I want our friends to understand why I'm divorcing him. I want consequences that match the deception. That's emotional justice, not legal justice. I can't deliver that directly, but we can create conditions where truth becomes unavoidable. Tell me how. Patricia had outlined a plan. We'd prepare divorce papers documenting the infidelity, with attached evidence photos, financial records, timeline of deception. We'd file them publicly, which would create a court record accessible to anyone who looked. We'd notify Blake's employer, not with accusations but with concerns about his schedule and expense reports, given that his claimed travel didn't match actual location data from credit cards. If there's financial fraud involved, if he's been billing his company for trips he never took, that's corporate theft. They'll investigate, but we won't make accusations. We'll just present facts and let them draw conclusions. And Simone? We'll ensure she receives copies of all filed documents. She deserves to know her partner has another wife. What she does with that information is her choice. When? That depends on you. Filing for divorce is easy, but you want impact. You want the timing to maximize consequences and minimize his ability to control the narrative. When does that happen? I'd thought for a long moment. Christmas. He always spends Christmas Eve with me, then claims to have work emergencies or family obligations on Christmas Day. I've never pushed back because I thought I was being understanding, but I think Christmas Day is when he's with them, his real family. Can you verify that? Not yet, but I will. Then we wait. We prepare everything now. Divorce papers, evidence packets, notification letters. To his employer. We file everything electronically so it's ready to go. And on Christmas Day, once you have visual confirmation of his location and family situation, you give me the signal. I file everything immediately, and we deliver papers to him in the most visible, undeniable way possible. How? Patricia had smiled, not warmly, but with satisfaction. We deliver them to his real family home while he's celebrating Christmas with them, in front of Simone and the children. We make his double life impossible to maintain for even another hour. That's brutal. That's justice. He's been living two lives, lying to two women, maintaining a deception that requires constant management. We're not destroying his life, we're just making the destruction he's been courting finally arrive. I'd signed the retainer agreement that day. The 6 weeks between hiring Patricia and Christmas Day had been the strangest of my life. I'd continued living with Blake, sleeping next to him, maintaining the fiction of our marriage while knowing it was ending. Every conversation felt surreal. Every I love you felt like a knife. But I'd kept my composure. Blake had no idea I knew. He continued his routine weekday evenings with me, occasional weekends with Simone and the children, business trips that were probably split between actual work and time with his other family. I documented everything. Every lie, every absence, every time he'd chosen them over me, without me knowing there was a choice being made. Dr. Torres, my therapist, had helped me process the rage without showing it. You're in a unique position, she'd said during one session. You know the truth, but he doesn't know you know. That gives you power. It also feels dishonest. I'm lying by omission. You're protecting yourself while gathering information. That's not dishonesty, that's survival. He spent 8 years lying to you about fundamental aspects of your life together. You spent 6 weeks gathering evidence of those lies. The scales aren't even close to balanced. I want him to hurt the way I'm hurting. He will. But more importantly, you'll rebuild. That's the real victory, not his pain, but your freedom and healing. I'd thrown myself into work, using hospital administration tasks as distraction. My colleagues had no idea anything was wrong. I'd maintained my professional reputation, my competence, my composure. Only Patricia and Dr. Torres knew the truth. And my sister, Vivienne. I'd told her. On November 15th, 5 days after discovering the second phone, she'd flown in from Portland, taken one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug that had finally broken my composure. I'm going to kill him, she'd said when I finished explaining. No killing, just legal consequences. Legal consequences are more painful anyway. Blake's always cared more about his image than his soul. Vivienne had helped me through the worst moments, the late nights when I'd almost confronted Blake just to end the horrible limbo. The days when maintaining the fiction felt impossible. The hours when I'd questioned whether I was overreacting or being vindictive. "You're not vindictive," she'd told me firmly. "Vindictive is wanting revenge that exceeds the harm. You're planning consequences that match the betrayal. That's justice." On December 15th, Patricia had called with an update. "Everything's ready. Divorce papers filed electronically. Pending your signal to make them active. Notification letters to Blake's employer prepared. Evidence packets compiled. We've also done some additional digging." "What did you find?" "Blake's expense reports don't match his actual travel. He's been billing the company for hotel stays in cities he never visited, using the refunds from canceled bookings to fund his double life. That's embezzlement. His company will fire him when they discover it, possibly prosecute." "How did you find that?" "We didn't. We hired a forensic accountant to review your financial records, and she noticed patterns in Blake's spending that suggested he was receiving money from somewhere beyond his stated salary. When we cross-referenced with public records of his expense reports, which pharmaceutical companies have to disclose for regulatory reasons, the discrepancy was obvious. So he's not just an adulterer, he's a criminal." "Likely, yes. But we're not pursuing criminal charges, we're just providing information to his employer so they can investigate. What they do with that information is up to them." "And Simone?" "We've confirmed she's not legally married to Blake. She believes she's in a committed relationship with a man who's separated from his wife. That's what Blake apparently told her about you. He said you and he were divorced 2 years ago but still technically married for tax reasons." I'd felt sick hearing that. Not just the lies Blake told me, but the lies he'd told Simone. She was a victim too, raising children with a man who was lying to her about his entire life. "She needs to know," I'd said. "She will. On Christmas Day, when we deliver the divorce papers to Blake at her house, she'll know everything." December 20th. Blake had confirmed he'd be home for Christmas Eve but needed to handle some work issues on Christmas Day. Classic Blake, setting up his alibi days in advance. I'd smiled and said I understood, that I'd planned to visit my sister anyway. All lies. Vivienne was coming here, to be with me when everything exploded. December 24th, Christmas Eve, we'd had dinner together. Blake had been attentive, affectionate even. He'd given me a necklace, expensive, thoughtful, a guilty conscience gift, I'd realized. He'd probably given Simone something similar. I'd given him a watch. Let him think everything was normal. "I love you," he'd said before we went to sleep. "I love the man I thought you were," I'd almost replied. But I'd said, "I love you too." One more lie for the collection. Christmas morning, Blake had left early. Emergency at work. He'd texted at 8 a.m. "So sorry. I'll make it up to you tonight." I'd waited until 10, then driven to Maplewood. Parked down the street from Simone's house where I had a clear view of the front window, and watched Blake's car arrive at 10:47 a.m. He'd gotten out carrying wrapped presents. Walked up to the door like he belonged there. Been greeted with hugs and kisses from Simone and the children. I'd watched them through the window for 20 minutes. Watched Blake help his son assemble a toy. Watched him kiss Simone in the kitchen. Watched them all sit down to Christmas brunch as a family. Then I'd driven home, picked up the ingredients I'd supposedly gone to buy, and driven back to document the Christmas dinner scene that would end Blake's double life. Now I sat in Patricia's office while she filed the divorce papers and sent notification letters to Blake's employer. Vivienne sat beside me, holding my hand. "How are you feeling?" my sister asked. "Numb, sad, angry, relieved. All of it at once. That's normal. Is any of this normal?" "No, but your response to it is healthy." Patricia finished her electronic filing and looked up. "It's done. Divorce papers are officially filed. Blake will be served at the Maplewood address within the hour. His employer will receive notification letters tomorrow morning when their office is open. And Simone will receive a full evidence packet explaining exactly who Blake is and what he's been hiding." "What happens now?" "Now Blake's world falls apart. He'll try to contact you. Try to explain or manipulate or threaten. Don't engage. Forward all communications to me. He'll try to control the narrative with friends and family. Let him try. We have evidence. He has lies. Eventually, the truth wins. And legally, the divorce will be finalized in about 6 months, depending on how much Blake fights, but given the evidence of infidelity and financial deception, he has very little leverage. You'll get the house, a significant financial settlement, and likely alimony. He'll get legal bills and the consequences of his choices." I'd nodded, still feeling surreal. This morning I'd woken up married to Blake. Tonight I'd go to sleep as someone filing for divorce. Someone whose marriage had been a lie from the start. Do you want to be at the house when he's served? Patricia asked. No, I want to be anywhere else. Smart. Go somewhere public. Somewhere with witnesses. Somewhere he can't confront you privately. A restaurant. A friend's house. Somewhere safe. Vivian squeezed my hand. My hotel. We'll order room service and watch terrible Christmas movies and you don't have to think about Blake at all. I don't think I can stop thinking about him. Then we'll think about him together, but at least you won't be alone. At 3:47 p.m., while Vivienne and I were eating Thai food in her hotel room, my phone buzzed with a call from Blake. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again immediately. Then again. Patricia had told me not to answer, not to engage. Let Blake spiral. Let him experience even a fraction of the confusion and fear I'd felt discovering his double life. The voicemails came in rapid succession. Iris, what the hell is this? Call me back now. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is insane. We need to talk. You're making a huge mistake. None of this is what it looks like. Just call me so I can explain. Iris, please, just give me a chance to explain. Please. The progression from anger to pleading took less than an hour. I listened to each voicemail once, saved them all, and forwarded them to Patricia as instructed. He sounds scared, Vivienne observed. Good. Are you okay? I don't know. Ask me in 6 months. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Simone. We need to talk. Please call me. I showed it to Vivienne. Are you going to call her? Patricia said not to communicate with anyone involved until the legal process is further along. Simone's a victim too. I know. But she's also part of the life Blake built while lying to me. I can't untangle those things yet. I texted back. I'm sorry for everything. My attorney will be in touch with information. I can't talk right now. Her response came immediately. I understand. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I believed her. Blake was good at compartmentalizing. Good at lying. Of course he'd convinced Simone he was separated. Divorced. Free. Of course she'd believed him. We were both married to a man who didn't exist. By evening, my phone had 17 missed calls from Blake, 23 text messages ranging from angry to desperate, and 3 voicemails from people I assumed were his family members, calling on his behalf. I'd turned off my phone on Patricia's advice, and left it with Vivienne to monitor for anything legally important. For the first time in 6 weeks, I wasn't performing normalcy, or documenting Blake's lies, or preparing for confrontation. I was just existing in the aftermath. Tell me what you're thinking, Vivienne said around 9 p.m. We'd moved past Thai food to ice cream, the universal comfort food of crisis. I'm thinking about all the times I felt lonely during our marriage, and thought it was just the normal ebb and flow of a relationship. All the times Blake canceled plans or seemed distracted or chose work over us. I thought I was being understanding. But I was just being convenient. You were being a good partner. He was being a liar. I keep trying to figure out when I should have known. What signs I missed. How I could have been so blind. Iris, no. You're not doing this. Blake is a master manipulator who spent 8 years perfecting his deception. You didn't miss signs. He didn't leave any. This is not your failure. It's his. Then why does it feel like my failure? Because betrayal makes you question everything, including yourself. But you have to separate his actions from your worth. He lied. You trusted. Those are different moral categories. I'd eaten more ice cream and tried to believe her. Around 10 p.m. Vivienne's phone rang. She'd given her number to Patricia as an emergency contact. She answered, listened, and hung up looking grim. What? Blake showed up at your house. Patricia had anticipated that, and arranged for a security camera installation yesterday. He's been there for 40 minutes, apparently trying to get in. She's calling the police to have him removed since the house is in your name and you've filed a restraining order as part of the divorce proceedings. He's going to be arrested? Probably not arrested, just removed and warned. But it establishes a pattern if he continues trying to contact you against legal instructions. This is really happening. Yes, my husband is being removed from our house by police. Your soon-to-be ex-husband is facing consequences for his choices. That's different, was it? I couldn't tell anymore. The line between justice and cruelty felt blurry. Blake had lied for 8 years, maintained a double life, stolen money from his company, betrayed 2 women simultaneously. He deserved consequences, but watching those consequences arrive felt less satisfying than I'd imagined. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt sad. Dr. Torres warned me about this, I told Vivian. She said revenge rarely feels as good as we think it will. This isn't revenge. This is protection. You filed for divorce, which is your right. You documented his lies, which is smart. You ensured Simone knew the truth, which is ethical. None of that is revenge, it's just refusing to continue being lied to. Blake would disagree. Blake's opinion stopped mattering the moment he chose to build a secret family while married to you. My phone, which Vivian had plugged in across the room, lit up with another incoming call. Blake, for the 23rd time. He's relentless, Vivian muttered. He's scared. His perfect compartmentalization just collapsed. Both women he's been lying to now know the truth. His employer knows he's been stealing. His image is destroyed. He's losing everything. And you feel sorry for him? No, but I feel something. I don't know what it is. It's grief. You're grieving the marriage you thought you had. That's healthy. Just don't confuse grief with obligation to give him another chance. There's no chance. The marriage was built on lies. You can't salvage something that never truly existed. Good. Hold on to that clarity. At midnight, Christmas turned into December 26th, technically the worst Christmas of my life, but also, strangely, the most honest. No more performing. No more pretending. Just the raw truth of my marriage's end. And the uncertain future ahead. What happens tomorrow? I asked Vivienne. Tomorrow you start rebuilding. One day at a time. One decision at a time. We'll figure it out together. What if I can't do this? You're already doing it. You discovered the worst betrayal possible and instead of falling apart, you built a case, protected yourself legally, and ensured the truth came out. You're stronger than you know. I don't feel strong. Strength isn't feeling invincible. It's doing what's necessary even when you're terrified. You're doing that. That's strength. I'd wanted to believe her. So I'd tried. December 26th arrived with dozens more messages from Blake, now forwarded directly to Patricia without me reading them. Vivienne had set up filters on my phone so Blake's communications went to a separate folder I didn't have to see unless I chose to. Patricia called at 9 a.m. Blake's attorney contacted me this morning. He wants to meet to discuss settlement terms. Already? He knows the evidence is overwhelming. He's trying to minimize damage. I suggested we hold off on settlement discussions until after his employer completes their investigation into the expense report fraud. That should conclude within 2 weeks. What will they find? Approximately $47,000 in fraudulent expense claims over 3 years. That's felony-level embezzlement. He'll be fired, possibly prosecuted. So he'll have no job and no income. Correct. Which affects spousal support calculations. If he's unemployed due to criminal activity, his ability to pay will be reduced. But that's not your problem. The court will order payment based on his earning potential, not his current unemployment. What about Simone? Will she be implicated? Not unless she knowingly participated in the fraud. From what we can tell, she believed Blake when he said he was traveling for work. She's a victim of his lies, too. That should have made me feel better. Simone was innocent, but it just made everything more complicated. 2 women, 2 families, all built on Blake's lies. None of us had deserved this. Have you heard from her directly? Patricia asked. She texted Christmas Day. I responded briefly, saying I couldn't talk. Nothing since. That's appropriate. You don't owe her a relationship or explanations beyond what's in the evidence packet she received. But if you do want to communicate, make sure I'm copied on everything for legal documentation. After hanging up with Patricia, I'd made myself coffee and tried to figure out what normal life looked like now. I had vacation time through New Year's, but after that I'd need to return to work, face colleagues, navigate questions, manage my professional reputation while my personal life imploded publicly. The hospital community was small. Blake's company had partnerships with our facility. People would know. They'd ask questions, express sympathy, judge my choices. I'd need to be ready for that. Vivienne had left that morning. She had to return to Portland for work but promised to come back New Year's if I needed her. I'd assured her I'd be fine, knowing it was partly true and partly performance. Alone in the hotel room, I'd pulled out my laptop and started making lists. Things I needed to do. 1. Change all passwords, bank accounts, email, social media. 2. Remove Blake's access to shared accounts. 3. File paperwork to take sole possession of the house. 4. Start looking for a therapist who specialized in betrayal trauma. 5. Figure out how to tell our mutual friends. 6. Begin the process of untangling our shared life. It was overwhelming. 8 years of marriage couldn't be undone with a few phone calls and legal documents. We had shared friends, shared finances, shared memories, all of it now contaminated by Blake's lies. My phone buzzed. Patricia again. Blake's attorney just sent over a settlement proposal. He's offering to leave quietly, waive any claim to the house or shared assets, accept minimal spousal support, agree to a quick divorce in exchange for you not pressing charges for the expense fraud. He wants me to protect him from criminal prosecution. Essentially, yes. His attorney frames it as avoiding unnecessary legal complications, but that's what it amounts to. What do you recommend? That depends on your goals. If you want closure and to move on quickly, this gets you everything financially with minimal fighting. If you want Blake to face full consequences, including potential criminal charges, we decline and let the legal process play out. What would you do? I'm not allowed to advise based on personal preference, but I'll say this. Criminal charges are the prosecutor's decision, not yours. Even if you agree to this settlement, his employer can still pursue charges. You're not actually protecting him, you're just not actively participating in his prosecution. So taking the settlement doesn't let him escape consequences? Not the important ones. He'll still be fired, still face employment consequences, still have his reputation destroyed. The criminal charges are uncertain anyway. Prosecutors have limited resources and might not pursue a $47,000 embezzlement case vigorously. Then I'll take the settlement. I want this over. Smart choice. I'll send confirmation to his attorney. With this agreement, we can finalize the divorce in about 3 months, instead of 6 to 8. 3 months. By spring, I'd legally be unmarried, single again at 36, starting over. That should have terrified me, but mostly it felt like relief. New Year's Eve arrived with an unexpected phone call. Simone. I'd been ignoring unknown numbers since Christmas, but this one came through with a text first. This is Simone. I know you said not to call, but I really need to talk to you. Please. Just 5 minutes. I'd stared at the message for 10 minutes before calling Patricia. Should I talk to her? Legally, there's no reason not to. She's not party to the divorce proceedings, but emotionally, are you ready? I don't know. But I keep thinking about her. About what Blake told her. How long she's been lied to. Whether she's okay. That's compassionate. But remember, you're not responsible for fixing Blake's other victims. You can talk to her if you want, but not because you feel obligated. I want to understand. I want to know the full truth of what Blake's been doing. Then call her. Record the conversation if she consents. And remember, you don't owe her anything. I'd called Simone that evening, sitting in the house I now owned solely. She'd answered immediately. Thank you for calling. I didn't think you would. I didn't think I would either. I don't even know where to start. Start with how long you've known Blake. She'd taken a breath. 9 years. We met at a pharmaceutical sales conference. He told me he was divorced, that his ex-wife was vindictive, and they were still technically married for tax reasons. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He seemed honest, successful, stable. When did you have children? Caleb was born 8 months after we met. Blake was thrilled. Said he'd always wanted to be a father. We moved in together when I was pregnant. Then Mira was born 2 years later. And he was around? Involved? Yes and no. He traveled a lot for work, or so I thought. But when he was home, he was present. He coached Caleb's soccer team. He read bedtime stories. He seemed like a devoted father. Did you ever suspect? No. Why would I? He had business cards, expense accounts, a consistent work schedule. Sometimes I wished he traveled less, but I understood career demands. I was a single mother before I met him. Having a partner, even part-time, felt like enough. When did you find out about me? Christmas Day. Your attorney's evidence packet arrived while we were having dinner. Blake tried to grab it, tried to explain it away, but I'd already seen the photos. You and him at what I now know is your house. Wedding photos. Bank statements showing a shared account I didn't know existed. What did he say? At first? That you were a stalker, someone he'd rejected who was making up lies. Then that you were an ex-girlfriend who wouldn't let go. Then, when I showed him the marriage certificate from the evidence packet, he finally admitted you were his wife but claimed it was a green card marriage, that it wasn't real. He told you it wasn't real. Yes. And I believed him for about 30 seconds. Then I looked at the photos again, you and him looking at each other the way people in love look at each other. Not like a fake marriage, like a real one. What did you do? I told him to leave. He's been staying at a hotel since Christmas. He keeps calling, trying to explain, but I don't answer. I can't. Every word that comes out of his mouth is probably a lie. Yes, probably. We'd sat in silence for a moment, two women connected by betrayal, trying to navigate truth in the ruins of lies. I'm sorry, Simone finally said. I know that's inadequate, but I'm sorry I was part of hurting you. You didn't know. That doesn't make it better. No, but it makes you a victim too. I don't feel like a victim. I feel like an idiot. How did I not see this? How did I let him lie to me for 9 years? The same way I let him lie to me for 8. Because he's good at it. Because we trusted him. Because people want to believe the person they love is telling the truth. What happens now? Legally, I mean. I'm divorcing him. That doesn't affect you directly, but it means he'll probably have even less time and resources for your family. I don't want him around my children. Not anymore. He's not who I thought he was. Are you planning to pursue child support? My attorney says I should. That Caleb and Mira are entitled to support from their father regardless of his other lies. But I don't know if I want to be tied to him legally for the next 11 years until Mira turns 18. You should pursue it. Your children deserve support. Don't let Blake's lies make you hesitate to claim what's legally theirs, says the woman divorcing him. Yes. But I don't have children with him. You do. That's a permanent connection whether you want it or not. She'd made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. This is so messed up. Yes. Did you love him? Really? I'd thought about that question. Did I love Blake? Had I ever truly loved him? Or just the person I'd thought he was? I loved the man I thought I was married to. That man doesn't exist. So I don't know if what I felt counts as real love or just mistaken attachment. That's painfully honest. Everything about this situation is painful. Might as well be honest about it. For what it's worth, I think you're handling this better than I am. I had 6 weeks to prepare. You had 6 days. How did you know? What made you start investigating? I'd told her about the credit card charge, the children's medicine, the unraveling thread that pulled apart Blake's entire fabricated reality. That's such a small detail to notice. That's how lies work. One small inconsistency leads to another, and eventually the whole structure collapses. What are you going to do now? Rebuild. Figure out who I am without him. Try to trust again eventually. I don't think I can trust again. Not for a long time. I don't blame you. We'd ended the call with mutual acknowledgement that we might never speak again, but that this conversation had been necessary. Two strangers connected by one man's lies, trying to make sense of the wreckage. After hanging up, I'd sat in the darkening house and thought about trust, betrayal, and the strange path that had brought me to this moment. A year ago, I'd been happy, or I'd thought I was happy. The distinction mattered now. How much of my life with Blake had been real? Our conversations, our intimacy, our shared plans for the future, all of it had happened within the framework of his lies. Did that invalidate the experiences themselves? I didn't have answers. Maybe I never would. January arrived with the finalization of Blake's termination from his pharmaceutical company. Patricia forwarded me the notification. Blake Henley has been terminated effective January 3rd for cause, specifically for fraudulent expense reporting, constituting embezzlement of company funds. The company has referred the matter to law enforcement but will not be pursuing civil recovery given Mr. Henley's agreement to repay all misappropriated funds. Attached was a repayment schedule, $47,000, over 3 years, plus interest. Blake had signed it as part of his severance agreement, choosing repayment over prosecution. How can he afford that? I'd asked Patricia. He has no job. Spousal support obligations to me. And presumably child support obligations to Simone. That's his problem to solve. The court will order payments based on his earning potential, not his current circumstances. If he can't pay, he'll face additional legal consequences. So he's financially destroyed, self-destroyed. These are consequences of his choices, not punishments you've imposed. The distinction felt important. I hadn't wanted to destroy Blake. I'd wanted to stop being lied to and betrayed. His destruction was a side effect of his own actions becoming visible. On January 5th, I returned to work. Walking into the hospital felt surreal. Everything looked the same, but I'd fundamentally changed. I was no longer Iris Henley, married hospital administrator. I was Iris Chambers, my maiden name, which I'd already begun using. Separated woman with a divorce in progress. My supervisor, Helen, called me into her office first thing. I heard about your situation. I'm so sorry, thank you. If you need time off or adjusted duties while you process everything, we can arrange that. I'd rather stay busy, actually. Work feels like the one stable thing in my life right now. understandable. But if that changes, my door is open. Throughout the day, colleagues had approached with carefully worded condolences. I heard you're going through something difficult. If you need anything, let me know. Take care of yourself. The hospital rumor mill had clearly been active over the holiday break. Everyone knew Blake and I were separating. Some probably knew why the pharmaceutical company where Blake worked had business relationships with our hospital, and industry gossip traveled fast. I'd handled each interaction with practiced composure. Thank you for your concern. I'm handling it. Let's focus on work. By afternoon, I'd almost convinced myself I was fine. Then I'd run into Dr. Harrison, a physician who'd socialized with Blake and me over the years. Iris, I just heard. If you need someone to talk to, I'm fine, thank you. Blake's behavior was inexcusable. Just know that we're all on your side. There are no sides. Just truth and lies. Blake chose lies. He'd looked uncomfortable with that directness but nodded. Still, if you need anything. After he left, I'd locked myself in my office and cried for the first time since Christmas. Not for Blake, not for the marriage. For the exhaustion of maintaining composure. Of being the strong one. Of having people look at me with pity I didn't want. I'd allowed myself 5 minutes, then I'd fixed my makeup and gone back to work. That evening, I'd come home to the house that now felt simultaneously too empty and too full of memories. I'd walked through rooms Blake and I had furnished together, decorated together, lived in together, all of it tainted by his lies. You should sell it, Vivian had said during our evening phone call. Start completely fresh. Maybe. But I also don't want to let Blake's lies drive me from a house I love. That's fair. Just don't force yourself to stay out of principle if being there makes you miserable. I'm not miserable. I'm just adjusting. That's healthy. Is it? Because I feel like I should be angrier, or sadder, or something more than this weird numbness. Numbness is protective. Your psyche is giving you space to process gradually, instead of all at once. That's actually very healthy. When does it stop being protective, and start being avoidance? Probably around the same time you stop calling me every night to check. I'll stop calling. I was joking. Call as much as you need. I'm here. By mid-January, a routine had emerged. Work during the day. Therapy twice a week. Phone calls with Vivienne in the evening. Weekends reorganizing the house, removing traces of Blake, reclaiming spaces as mine alone. Patricia kept me updated on legal proceedings. Blake had signed the settlement agreement without further negotiation. The divorce would be finalized in late March. I'd keep the house and most assets. He'd pay minimal spousal support for 2 years and be responsible for all legal fees. He didn't even try to negotiate, Patricia noted. That's unusual. He knows he has no leverage. Or he's planning something else. Like what? I don't know, but Blake's been quiet. Too quiet. Usually when people lose this comprehensively, they either fight viciously or collapse completely. Blake's doing neither. He's just accepting everything. Maybe he's actually guilty and knows he deserves this. Maybe. Or maybe he's calculating his next move. That conversation had unsettled me. I'd assumed Blake's acquiescence meant he'd accepted consequences and moved on. But Patricia's suspicion that he was planning something made sense too. Blake was strategic. He didn't accept defeat, he regrouped. What was he regrouping for? The answer came on February 2nd. A Facebook message from an account I didn't recognize. Hi Iris. You don't know me, but I'm someone Blake was involved with before you. I saw your name in his divorce filing, public records, and wanted to reach out. I think we should talk. Claire. I'd immediately forwarded it to Patricia. Don't respond yet, she'd instructed. Let me investigate who Claire is and whether this is legitimate contact or Blake using someone to get to you. Within 2 hours, Patricia had called back. Claire Wellington. She dated Blake 9 years ago, right before he met you. I've confirmed her identity through public records. She's legitimate. What does she want? Unknown. But I think you should talk to her. If Blake has a pattern of this behavior, double lives, secret relationships, that's relevant information. I'd messaged Claire. My attorney verified your identity. I'm willing to talk. What's this about? Her response came within minutes. Blake did something similar to me. Not a secret family, but a secret engagement. I thought we were exclusive. Found out he was engaged to someone else the whole time. I'm so sorry you're going through this. I know how much it hurts. We'd arranged to meet for coffee on February 4th. Claire turned out to be a composed woman in her early 40s. Professionally dressed. Clearly successful. She'd brought a folder of documents. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. I debated whether to reach out. "You don't need more pain, but I thought you should know Blake's pattern goes back further than just you and Simone." "Tell me." She'd laid out a timeline. Blake had dated Claire from 2013 to 2015. During that time, she'd thought they were building toward marriage. He'd discussed moving in together, meeting families, long-term plans. Then she discovered he was simultaneously engaged to another woman, a relationship he'd maintained for 2 years while also dating Claire. I found out through social media. Someone tagged him in engagement photos. When I confronted him, he said it was a fake engagement for immigration purposes, that the woman needed a green card and he was helping her. I almost believed him. Then I did research and found out the woman was American. There was no immigration issue. He'd just been lying. "What did you do?" "I broke up with him. Cut all contact. Tried to warn the other woman, but she didn't believe me. They got married, and I assumed that was the end of it." "Who was she? The woman he married?" Claire had pulled out a photo from her folder. Her name was Catherine Morrison. I'd stared at the photo. A woman who looked nothing like me, but who I suddenly felt connected to. Was? Past tense. She died in 2016. Car accident. I saw the obituary. Blake never mentioned being married before. I'm not surprised. That's his pattern: erase one life to build another. When Catherine died, he probably saw it as an opportunity to start completely fresh. And then he met me. And Simone. Apparently simultaneously. We'd sat in silence, processing the timeline. Blake hadn't just maintained a double life with me and Simone. He'd been doing variations of this behavior for over a decade. Multiple relationships, multiple lies, a pattern of compartmentalization and deception so consistent it was almost professional. "How did you know to look for me?" I'd asked. I checked Blake's name periodically through public records. Morbid curiosity, I guess. When your divorce filing came up, I read through it and saw the circumstances. Then I did more digging and found references to Simone and the children. I realized Blake had escalated not just double dating, but double families. "I thought you should know it's not you. It's him. This is who he is." "Thank you for telling me." "Are you okay?" Stupid question, probably. "I'm managing. Some days are better than others. It took me 3 years to trust anyone again after Blake." "Don't rush yourself. Did you ever get closure?" "Not really. I never fully understood why he did it, why he needed multiple relationships, why lying came so easily to him. Eventually, I accepted that I'd never understand. His psychology isn't my responsibility to decode. But doesn't it bother you, not knowing why?" "Less than you'd think. Understanding why wouldn't change what he did. It wouldn't make the betrayal less real. So eventually, I stopped trying to figure him out, and started figuring myself out instead." That conversation had stayed with me for days. Blake had a pattern. This wasn't a one-time mistake or a situation that spiraled out of control. This was deliberate, repeated, practiced deception. He'd done it to Catherine, to Claire, to me, to Simone, probably to others I didn't know about. The question wasn't why he'd betrayed me specifically. The question was why he compulsively betrayed everyone. But Claire was right. Understanding Blake's psychology wouldn't change what he'd done. And spending energy trying to understand him meant not spending that energy on healing myself. On February 10th, Patricia filed additional documentation with the court. Evidence of Blake's pattern of deception, statements from Claire about his previous behavior, arguments for why the settlement should remain as negotiated despite Blake's potential claims of unfair treatment. "Why are we filing this now?" I'd asked. "Because Blake's attorney just submitted a motion to modify the settlement. He's claiming he signed under duress and emotional distress. He wants to reopen negotiations. He's trying to back out. He's trying. He won't succeed. He had independent legal counsel. The evidence against him is overwhelming. And the settlement is actually generous given what he did. But he's going to make this difficult." "How difficult?" "Expect the divorce to take longer than March. Probably May or June. And expect him to challenge everything we've already agreed to." "Why is he doing this now?" "He accepted everything in January. My guess?" His initial response was panic and guilt. He signed quickly to contain damage. Now that some time has passed, he's getting angry instead of guilty. Angry people fight, even when they have no case. So we fight back. We don't have to. His motion will be denied. But we can file counter-motions establishing his bad faith and asking for additional penalties. Do it. By mid-February, I'd accepted that the divorce would be longer and more contentious than I'd hoped. Blake had apparently decided that if he was going down, He'd make the process as difficult as possible for everyone. Fine. Let him fight. I had evidence, truth, and a competent attorney. He had lies and anger. Truth would win eventually. It always did. March arrived with an unexpected development. Blake attempted to contact me directly, violating the no-contact provisions of our separation agreement. He'd shown up at the hospital. I'd been leaving work around 6 p.m. when I'd noticed him waiting by my car. My first instinct had been fear. He'd been increasingly erratic according to Patricia's updates, but I'd kept walking, pulling out my phone to record the interaction. Iris, please, I just need to talk to you. You're violating the separation agreement. Leave now or I'll call security. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes to explain. There's nothing to explain. You lied about having a second family for 8 years. Those facts don't need explanation. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You were married to me. You had a family with Simone. You lied to both of us. Simple. I never meant to hurt anyone. Intent doesn't matter when the impact is this devastating. Leave, Blake. Now. I'm not leaving until you hear me out. I'd called hospital security. 2 officers had arrived within minutes, and Blake had been escorted from the property with a warning that returning would result in arrest for trespassing. But he'd accomplished what he wanted. He'd rattled me. I'd driven home shaking, double-checking locks, jumping at sounds. The calm composure I'd maintained for months had cracked. Patricia had filed an emergency motion for a restraining order that evening. It was granted within 24 hours, prohibiting Blake from coming within 500 feet of me, my workplace, or my home. He's escalating, Patricia warned. People who lose control often try to regain it through intimidation. Don't go anywhere alone. Vary your routine. Install security cameras if you haven't already. Take this seriously. I am taking it seriously, but I refuse to live in fear. Caution isn't fear. It's prudence. Dr. Torres had echoed the concern. Blake is experiencing consequences he's not accustomed to. He's used to controlling narratives and managing perceptions. When that control is taken away, some people become dangerous. You think he'd hurt me? I think he's unpredictable right now. And unpredictable people should be treated with caution. For the first time since Christmas, I'd felt genuinely afraid. Not of the divorce or the legal process, but of Blake himself. Of what someone might do when their carefully constructed life completely collapsed. On March 12th, Blake violated the restraining order again. This time he'd called my office phone repeatedly, leaving increasingly desperate messages. I need you to understand. Please just talk to me. You're destroying me. Is that what you want? To completely destroy me? I loved you. I still love you. This doesn't have to end like this. You're being cruel. You're punishing me beyond what I deserve. Each call had been documented, forwarded to Patricia, and used as evidence of Blake's refusal to accept boundaries. The judge held a hearing on March 15th and found Blake in contempt. He was sentenced to 30 days in jail. 30 days feels harsh for phone calls, I told Patricia. It's not harsh, it's proportional. He violated a court order twice despite clear warnings. The judge is establishing that Blake can't manipulate his way out of consequences anymore. Blake's incarceration had created temporary peace. No calls, no attempts to contact, no legal maneuvers, just silence while he served his contempt sentence. During those 30 days, I'd focused on healing, more therapy, more reorganizing the house, more processing of 8 years of lies. Slowly, the numbness began to lift, replaced by genuine emotions, anger, grief, relief, confusion, all of it messy and complicated but real. Vivienne visited for a weekend, and we'd spent it doing normal things. Cooking, watching movies, talking about future plans. Not Blake, not the divorce. Just life moving forward. You seem better, she'd observed Sunday morning. I am better. Or at least, I'm getting there. What changed? I think I'm finally accepting that Blake is who he is, not who I wanted him to be, not who he pretended to be, just a person who lies easily and hurts people without much remorse. Once I stopped trying to understand why and just accepted that he is this way, it became easier. That's mature. Or self-protective. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. Either way, it's growth. On April 10th, Blake was released from jail. Patricia filed for an immediate hearing to finalize the divorce now that his contempt sentence was served. He's had 30 days to think about whether continued fighting is worth it, she'd explained. Sometimes incarceration provides clarity. The hearing was set for April 20th. 2 weeks to prepare. 2 weeks until the marriage would be legally, finally over. I'd felt ready. After 4 months of legal battles, emotional turmoil, and Blake's attempts to control the narrative, I was ready for the formal ending. Ready to close this chapter and begin the next one without his shadow over everything. But Blake, apparently, had different plans. On April 18th, 2 days before the final divorce hearing, Blake's attorney filed an emergency motion. They were claiming new evidence had emerged that changed the circumstances of the divorce. Patricia had called me immediately. Blake claims he has proof you knew about Simone and the children before Christmas, that you fabricated the discovery timeline to make yourself look sympathetic. That's absurd. I found out November 10th. I have documentation, I know. We have time-stamped evidence of your discovery, your investigation, everything. But Blake's attorney is claiming they have text messages between you and a friend where you discussed knowing about his other family months before November. Show me. Patricia had forwarded screenshots of alleged text messages between me and someone named Hannah M. In the texts, discussing Blake's double life in September, 2 months before my actual discovery. The messages looked real, proper format, my phone number, reasonable conversation flow, except they were completely fabricated. I didn't know anyone named Hannah M., and I definitely hadn't discussed Blake's other family in September because I hadn't known about it. These are fake, I'd told Patricia, obviously. But we need to prove it. Blake's attorney is arguing that you committed fraud against the court by lying about your discovery timeline to gain sympathy and a more favorable settlement. How do we prove the messages are fake? Forensic analysis of your phone records. We'll subpoena your actual text message logs from your provider and show these don't exist in the original data. But it'll take time. The hearing on the 20th will need to be postponed. He's delaying. This whole thing is just a tactic to postpone the divorce. Yes, but we have to respond to the motion. The court won't ignore claims of fraud even if they seem baseless, so we're back to fighting. Again. For another month or two? Yes. But Iris, this is desperate behavior. Blake knows he's losing, so he's trying anything to delay or disrupt. That actually works in our favor. Long-term judges don't look kindly on parties who make false accusations. The postponed hearing had been rescheduled for May 18th. Another month of limbo. Another month of being legally tied to Blake. I'd wanted to scream, or cry, or give up. But instead, I'd done what I'd been doing for 5 months. Continued forward methodically, trusting the process, believing truth would eventually win. Dr. Torres had helped me process the frustration. Blake is losing control, and this is his last attempt to regain it. By dragging out the divorce, he keeps you connected to him. That's not about love or reconciliation, it's about power. He can't accept that you've taken all his power away. So what do? Keep doing what you're doing. Document everything. Trust your attorney. Live your life as independently as possible. Don't give him the satisfaction of knowing he's gotten to you. But he has gotten to me. I'm exhausted. Exhaustion isn't the same as defeat. You're tired because you've been fighting for months. That's normal. But tired people can still win. On April 25th, forensic analysis of my phone records was complete. The alleged text messages with Hannah M. didn't exist in my actual data. They'd been fabricated, either created wholesale with fake screenshots, or manipulated from real messages with names and content changed. Patricia filed a motion to dismiss Blake's fraud claims and added a counter-motion for sanctions against Blake and his attorney for knowingly submitting false evidence. This is huge, she'd told me. If the judge finds Blake submitted fraudulent evidence, he could face additional contempt charges, fines, possibly bar complaints against his attorney. This was a spectacular own goal. Will the judge actually sanction him? Almost certainly. Judges take false evidence very seriously. It undermines the entire legal system. The hearing on May 18th was brief. The judge reviewed the forensic evidence, listened to arguments from both sides, and ruled decisively. Mr. Henley's claims of fraud are not only unsubstantiated but appear to be deliberately fabricated. This court finds no basis for the emergency motion and dismisses it with prejudice. Further, this court sanctions Mr. Henley $10,000 for submitting false evidence and warns that any additional attempts to delay these proceedings through fraudulent claims will result in additional contempt charges. He then looked directly at Blake. Mr. Henley, you've had multiple opportunities to accept the consequences of your actions with dignity. Instead, you've attempted manipulation, violated restraining orders, and now submitted false evidence. This behavior ends now. The divorce will proceed as scheduled on June 1st. I suggest you accept that and move forward with your life. Blake had looked furious, and defeated simultaneously. His attorney had looked embarrassed. I'd felt nothing but tired relief. After the hearing, Patricia and I had gone for coffee. "That was as decisive a victory as you could hope for," she'd said. "Blake has no credibility left. The June 1st hearing will be a formality. The divorce will be finalized. You'll be free." Why doesn't it feel like victory? Because victory in divorce doesn't feel triumphant. It just feels like survival. You've survived Blake's betrayal, his lies, his attempts to control you. That's worth celebrating, even if it doesn't feel glorious. What happens to Blake now? He faces the consequences he's been avoiding. Loss of the marriage, loss of financial stability, loss of reputation. His relationship with Simone is probably damaged beyond repair. His children will grow up knowing their father lied to everyone. Those are real, permanent consequences. And me? You get to rebuild without him. That's the real victory, not his suffering, but your freedom. June 1st, 2024. 7 months after discovering Blake's double life. 5 months after filing for divorce. The day everything became official. I'd arrived at the courthouse with Patricia, Vivienne, and a sense of surreal finality. After months of fighting, today would be simple. A judge would review the settlement agreement, confirm both parties understood the terms, and sign the divorce decree. Blake was already there with his attorney. He looked diminished, thinner, older, exhausted. We made brief eye contact across the courtroom. He looked away first. The hearing lasted 17 minutes. The judge confirmed we both understood we were ending our marriage, that the settlement was fair and mutually agreed upon, that there were no outstanding disputes or claims. "Miss Chambers, do you agree to the terms of this divorce decree?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Mr. Henley, do you agree to the terms of this divorce decree?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Then by the power vested in me by the state, I declare your marriage legally dissolved. Both parties are free to remarry. This court is adjourned." And just like that, I was unmarried. Single. Divorced at 36 after 8 years of marriage that had been built on lies from the beginning. Outside the courthouse, Vivienne hugged me. "How do you feel?" "I don't know." "Relieved? Sad? Empty? All of it?" "That's normal." "Is it? Because I thought I'd feel more. Something. Instead, I just feel tired." Patricia had joined us on the courthouse steps. "Congratulations. Or condolences. Whichever feels more appropriate. Thank you. For everything. For fighting for me. For not letting Blake manipulate the process. For getting me through this. That's what you paid me for. But for what it's worth, you handled this better than most. You stayed focused on the truth. Didn't let emotions derail the legal strategy. And came out the other side with your dignity intact. That's rare." Blake had exited the courthouse alone. His attorney had left separately. He'd stood on the steps for a moment, looking lost, then walked to his car without looking back. I'd watched him go, and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, not even much anger, just a vague sense of waste. 8 years. 2 families. So many lies. And for what? What had Blake gained from all that deception that was worth the destruction? I didn't know. Maybe I never would. "Lunch?" Vivienne asked. "We should celebrate." Celebrate seems like the wrong word. Commemorate. Then. Mark the occasion. You're officially free of Blake. That's worth acknowledging. We'd gone to lunch at an upscale restaurant downtown. Ordered champagne despite it being barely noon. Toasted to endings and new beginnings and the messy space between. "What happens now?" Vivienne asked. "Practically. I mean, what changes in your daily life?" "Not much, actually. I've been living independently since December. Blake's been paying into an escrow account for the settlement funds, which will be released to me now that the divorce is final. The house is already in my name. I don't have to see him or communicate with him again unless I choose to. And emotionally, that's harder to predict. Dr. Torres says I should expect a grief period even though I've already been processing for months. That finalizing the divorce will trigger a new wave of loss. Loss of what? You didn't lose anything real. The marriage was built on lies. Loss of the future I thought I'd have. Loss of the person I thought Blake was. Loss of trust that people are who they say they are. Those are real losses even if the specific marriage wasn't real. That's depressingly insightful. I've had a lot of therapy. Patricia had joined us for lunch and provided a final debrief. The settlement funds will transfer within 5 business days. You're receiving $180,000, half the value of his $401K. plus compensation for your contributions to shared assets. The house is yours. Blake keeps his car and personal belongings. He'll pay $800 monthly in spousal support for 18 months. Then obligations are complete. What about his obligations to Simone? That's separate. She filed for child support, which the court granted based on his earning potential. He'll owe her approximately $2,000 monthly for both children until they turn 18. Combined with his restitution to the pharmaceutical company and his legal fees, Blake's going to be financially strained for years. Good. That sounds bitter. It is bitter. He stole 8 years of my life, lied to me constantly, exposed me to potential legal liability if his fraud had been discovered differently. Bitter is an appropriate emotional response. Fair enough. After lunch, Vivian had headed to the airport. She had work commitments in Portland. Patricia had returned to her office, and I'd driven home alone, officially divorced, legally free, emotionally exhausted. The house was quiet. I'd walked through rooms I'd reclaimed over the past 6 months, removing Blake's presence methodically. This was my space now, my home, my fresh start. I'd poured a glass of wine and sat on the back patio, watching the sunset and thinking about what came next, not just tomorrow or next week, but the long arc of my life post-Blake. Who was I without him? Without the identity of being married, being part of a couple, being Blake's wife? I didn't know yet, but I had time to figure it out. Time without lies, without betrayal, without the exhausting performance of normalcy while my marriage crumbled invisibly. That was worth something, maybe everything. Summer arrived with a strange new normal. I was single, divorced, and rebuilding an identity I'd lost somewhere in 8 years of marriage. Work continued to be stable, my position at the hospital was secure, my reputation intact despite the personal chaos. I'd started dating in July, nothing serious, just testing whether I could trust someone new. The first few dates had been disasters. I'd been hypervigilant for signs of deception, unable to relax, constantly analyzing whether people were being honest. Dr. Torres had predicted this. Trust rebuilding takes time. Don't force yourself into relationships before you're ready, and don't judge yourself for being cautious. How long until I can trust again? However long it takes. Everyone's timeline is different. Don't rush yourself. By August, I'd gotten more comfortable with casual dating. I'd met a man named Oliver, a software engineer who seemed genuinely kind and refreshingly straightforward. We'd been seeing each other for 3 weeks when he'd said something that made me freeze. I need to tell you something. I'm divorced. It ended badly. My ex-wife cheated, and I've been pretty mistrustful since then. I'd stared at him, processing the unexpected honesty. I'm divorced too. Similar situation. Well, not cheating exactly, but my ex-husband had an entire second family I didn't know about. Jesus. That's worse than cheating. It felt worse, yeah. Are you okay now? Getting there. Some days are better than others. Same. We'd sat in comfortable silence for a moment. 2 wounded people trying to figure out if trust was possible after betrayal. I like you, Oliver had said. But I'm probably going to be weird about stuff. I'll ask questions that seem paranoid. I'll need reassurance sometimes. I'm working on it in therapy, but it's slow. I'm the same. I'll probably analyze everything you say for hidden meanings. I'll need transparency that might feel excessive. I'm also working on it, so we're both damaged. Apparently. Want to be damaged together and see what happens? I'd laughed, actually laughed for the first time in months. Yeah, let's try that. Dating Oliver had been unexpectedly healing. He understood the lingering trauma of betrayal. He didn't judge my hypervigilance or my need for constant reassurance that he was being honest, and I extended the same patience to him. It wasn't passionate or dramatic, but it was honest. And honest felt better than anything I'd had with Blake. In September, I'd received an unexpected letter. From Simone. Dear Iris, I hope it's okay that I'm writing to you. I got your address from the divorce documents, public record. Sorry if that seems invasive. I wanted to update you on what's happened since Christmas. Blake and I are officially done. I filed for sole custody of Caleb and Mira, which was granted given Blake's legal issues and unreliability. He has supervised visitation rights but rarely exercises them. The kids are adjusting, but it's been hard. They miss the version of their father they thought existed. I've been explaining age-appropriately that Blake has problems with honesty, and that's not their fault or their responsibility. Financially, things are tight. Blake's child support payments are often late, and I had to hire an attorney to enforce the court order. But we're managing. I also wanted to say thank you. I know that sounds strange, thanking the woman whose husband I unknowingly shared. But your exposure of Blake's lies freed me from a relationship built on deception. I was raising my children with someone I didn't truly know. Now I can raise them with honesty, even if it's harder. I hope you're healing. I hope you've found peace. And I hope someday we can look back on this nightmare and appreciate that we both survived something most people can't imagine. Simone, I'd read the letter 3 times, crying by the end. Simone was right, we'd both survived. Not just Blake's betrayal, but the aftermath. The legal battles, the social judgment, the financial strain, the emotional devastation. And we'd done it without destroying each other, without competing for victim status, without making Blake's lies create additional trauma between us. I'd written back, "Dear Simone, thank you for writing. I've thought about you and the kids often. Wondered how you were managing. I'm glad Blake is out of your daily life. You and the children deserve honesty and stability, not his constant deception. I'm doing better. Some days are still hard, but I'm rebuilding. I'm dating someone new who understands trust issues because he has his own. We're figuring it out together. I don't know if we'll ever be friends, but I respect you. You handled an impossible situation with grace. Your children are lucky to have you. Take care, Iris." On October 15th, 1 year after discovering Blake's double life, I'd gone back to the place it all started. The grocery store where he'd bought children's medicine while supposedly in Chicago. I'd walked the aisles, looking at the same products Blake had purchased that day. Children's cold medicine, orange juice, crackers. The mundane items that had unraveled my entire reality. A year ago, I'd been devastated, betrayed, lost. Now I was divorced, dating someone new, building a life based on truth instead of lies. The devastation had transformed into strength. The betrayal had taught me what I deserved. The lostness had become independence. Blake had taken 8 years of my life. But I'd taken back my future, and that future, uncertain as it was, felt more real than anything I'd had with him. November arrived with an unexpected sense of peace. I'd been divorced for 5 months, dating Oliver for 4, and generally feeling like a person again rather than a victim in recovery. Work had promoted me associate administrator to vice president of operations, a significant advancement that came with increased responsibility and salary. I'd earned it through competence and dedication, not despite the divorce but independent of it. "You're thriving," Dr. Torres noted during our session. "How does that feel?" Strange. I expected to still be devastated. Instead, I'm happy? That's healthy growth. The divorce wasn't the end of your life, it was the end of a lie. Once you stopped living a lie, your actual life could flourish. Blake texted me last week. First contact since the divorce was finalized. What did he say? That he was sorry. That he'd destroyed the best thing in his life. That he hoped I could forgive him someday. How did you respond? I didn't. There's nothing to say. He's not sorry for what he did, he's sorry he faces consequences. Those are different things. That's very clear-sighted. I'm tired of giving Blake's emotions more weight than my own. He made choices. He faces consequences. I move forward. That's the entire relationship now. Have you forgiven him? I don't know. I'm not angry anymore. Which might be the same as forgiveness, or it might just be indifference. I can't tell the difference. Both are valid. Forgiveness isn't required for healing. On Thanksgiving, I'd had dinner with Oliver and his family. They'd welcomed me warmly, no judgment about my divorce or my past. Oliver's mother had pulled me aside after dinner. Oliver seems happier than he's been in years. Thank you for that. He makes me happy too. You've both been through difficult divorces. It's nice to see you healing together. Some people think dating another divorced person means bringing too much baggage. 2 people with trust issues. I think it means 2 people who understand pain and choose kindness anyway. That's not baggage, that's wisdom. December arrived with a decision. What to do for Christmas. Last year had been the divorce filing, the dramatic exposure, the beginning of Blake's consequences. This year would be the first Christmas without the shadow of that trauma. Oliver suggested we create new traditions, not trying to recreate what you had before Blake's lies were exposed. Something completely new. Just us. We'd rented a cabin in the mountains for Christmas week. No family obligations, no social expectations. Just quiet time to enjoy each other and celebrate making it through a year of rebuilding. On Christmas Eve, sitting by a fireplace in the cabin, Oliver had asked, "Do you ever regret how you handled the Blake situation? The timing, the public exposure, the dramatic confrontation? Sometimes. The vindictive part of me, the part that wanted Blake to hurt, feels satisfied with how it unfolded. But the part of me that just wanted to be free wonders if I could have done it more quietly. Would quiet have been better? It would have been less dramatic, but it also would have let Blake control the narrative. He would have spun the divorce as mutual, amicable, no one's fault. People would have assumed we just grew apart. No one would have known what he actually did. And knowing matters? To me, yes. Not for revenge, but for truth. Blake spent 8 years lying to me and Simone. Making that truth public meant he couldn't lie anymore, couldn't manipulate perception, couldn't escape into a new life with a new set of lies. Fair enough. Do you think I was vindictive? I think you were hurt and angry and methodical. That's not vindictive, that's someone protecting themselves while the foundation of their life collapsed. Blake would disagree. Blake's opinion stopped mattering the moment he chose to build a second family while married to you. His judgments of your behavior are irrelevant. On Christmas Day, Oliver and I had exchanged simple gifts, books we thought the other would enjoy. Nothing expensive or dramatic. Then we'd spent the day hiking, cooking together, talking about future plans. Where do you see us in a year? Oliver had asked over dinner. I don't know. I'm still learning to trust my own judgment about people. That's honest. But I like you. I trust you more than I've trusted anyone since Blake. That feels significant. I feel the same. Damaged together is working. Maybe we're not damaged. Maybe we're just careful now. Careful together, then. That night, lying next to Oliver and watching snow fall outside the cabin window, I'd thought about the journey from Blake's betrayal to this moment. 2 Christmases. The first marked by devastation and revenge. The second marked by healing and new beginnings. I couldn't erase what Blake had done. The lies, the betrayal, the years of deception, those were permanent parts of my story now. But they didn't have to be the defining parts. The defining parts could be how I'd survived, how I'd protected myself, how I'd rebuilt, how I'd learned to trust again, carefully, with someone who understood caution because he needed it too. Blake had taken 8 years, but I'd taken them back by refusing to let his lies define my future. That was the real revenge. Not destroying him, but building something better without him. By the following spring, 18 months after discovering Blake's double life and 9 months after the divorce finalized, I'd achieved something approaching contentment. Not the naive happiness of my marriage, I'd never be that trusting again, but a more grounded, realistic satisfaction with life. Oliver and I had moved in together in March. A cautious step, extensively discussed in therapy, carefully negotiated with clear boundaries about what we both needed for security. His apartment or mine wouldn't work, too many memories, too much history. So we'd found something new, a condo neither of us had lived in before, space we could build together without ghosts. This feels significant, Oliver had said, the day we signed the lease. It is significant. We're choosing to trust each other with shared space, shared life, shared vulnerability. Are you scared? Terrified? You? Same, but the good kind of terrified. The this might actually work kind. I'd sold the house in April. Too many memories of Blake. Too much tainted history in rooms we'd shared. The new owners were a young couple expecting their first child, excited about the space, the neighborhood, the future they'd build there. I'd watched them sign the closing papers and felt relief. That house had been my home for 8 years, but it had also been the stage for Blake's lies. Letting it go felt like shedding dead skin. The money from the sale had been substantial, $370,000 after paying off the remaining mortgage. Combined with the settlement funds from Blake and my increased salary, I was in the best financial position of my adult life. What are you going to do with it? Vivienne asked during one of our weekly calls. I don't know yet. Part of me wants to invest it conservatively, build long-term security. Another part wants to do something meaningful, something that turns Blake's lies into actual good. Like what? Maybe a scholarship fund for women leaving difficult marriages? Or funding for legal aid organizations that help people through contentious divorces. Something that takes the pain Blake caused and transforms it into help for others. That's very evolved of you. Or very therapeutic, I can't tell anymore. In May, I'd set up the Iris Chambers Foundation for Divorce Support, a small nonprofit that provided grants to women who needed legal representation but couldn't afford it. The fund was seeded with $50,000 from my settlement money, Poetic Justice, using Blake's forced restitution to help other women escape bad marriages. Patricia Thornton had agreed to serve on the board pro bono. This is excellent work, she'd said at our first board meeting. There are so many people trapped in marriages because they can't afford to leave. This fund will change lives. That's the goal. Turn my terrible experience into something useful. By summer, the foundation had helped 7 women file for divorce and navigate legal proceedings they couldn't have managed alone. Each one sent thank you letters that made me cry, stories of abuse, betrayal, financial control, exactly the kinds of marriages that destroyed people. You're doing what Blake never could, Dr. Torres observed during one session. You're taking responsibility for impact, not just intent. Blake always claimed good intentions while creating terrible impact. You're creating good impact regardless of the complicated intentions. My intentions aren't that complicated. I want to help people, and I want Blake's money to do something useful instead of just sitting in my account as payment for his lies. Both can be true. Oliver had been supportive throughout the foundation work, even volunteering his tech skills to build a website and online application system. This is important, he'd said when I'd thanked him. Not just for the women you're helping, but for you. You're reclaiming narrative, turning victim into advocate. I'm not trying to reclaim anything. You don't have to try. It's happening naturally. That's even better. In July, I'd received an unexpected email from Blake. Iris, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I respect that. But I've been in therapy for the past year, working on understanding why I did what I did, not to excuse it, but to make sure I never do it again. I wanted you to know I'm genuinely sorry. Not just sorry I got caught, or sorry I face consequences. Sorry that I hurt you, lied to you, wasted 8 years of your life on a relationship that was never honest. You deserved better. You deserved truth from the beginning. I was too cowardly and too selfish to give you that. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know I finally understand what I did and why it was indefensible. I hope you're doing well. I hope you found someone who treats you the way I should have, with honesty and respect and actual love, not the performance of it. Blake, I'd read the email 3 times, looking for manipulation or hidden agenda. But it seemed genuine, simple, direct, accepting full responsibility without excuses. I'd shown it to Dr. Torres. What do you think? I think Blake is doing work. Whether that work is sincere or performative for potential future relationships, I can't know. But the email itself is appropriate, taking responsibility, not asking for anything, wishing you well. Should I respond? Do you want to? Part of me wants to tell him to fuck off. Another part wants to acknowledge that he's trying. I don't know which impulse to trust. Trust neither, or trust both. Respond if you feel it serves your healing, not his. I'd thought about it for 3 days. Then I'd replied, Blake, I received your email. Thank you for the apology. I don't forgive you. But I'm not actively angry anymore either. What you did was indefensible. But I've stopped spending energy on you and your choices. I'm focused on my own life now. I hope therapy helps you become someone who doesn't hurt people the way you hurt me and Simone and your children. Not for my sake, I'm done with you. But for whoever comes next, don't contact me again. This is closure, not renewed connection. Iris, brief, clear, final. I'd sent it, and immediately blocked his email address. Whatever he'd wanted from that exchange, forgiveness, absolution, connection, he hadn't gotten it, and he wouldn't get another chance. By fall, 2 years after discovering Blake's double life, I'd built a life I was genuinely proud of. Good job, good relationship, meaningful volunteer work, active social life. The divorce wasn't the central event of my identity anymore, it was just part of my history. Oliver and I had gotten engaged in September. A quiet proposal during a weekend trip to the coast. Nothing dramatic or public. He'd simply said, I want to marry you. I want to build a life where we're both safe to be honest and vulnerable. Will you marry me? I'd said yes without hesitation. Which felt significant 2 years ago. I'd been too devastated to imagine trusting anyone enough to marry again. Now I was choosing it, consciously, with someone who understood broken trust because he'd experienced it too. Are you sure about this? Vivian had asked, when I'd called to tell her. 2 years isn't very long after Blake. It's not about time since Blake. It's about trust built with Oliver. We've been transparent, consistent, honest. I know him in ways I never knew Blake. That's very rational. Is that bad? No. Just different from your first marriage. You and Blake were passionate, impulsive. You and Oliver are careful, deliberate. Careful is better. Passion can hide lies. Careful reveals them. We'd set a wedding date for the following June. Small ceremony. Immediate family only. Focused on commitment rather than performance. Everything Blake's and my wedding hadn't been. In October, I'd received a letter from Simone, the first contact since her letter a year ago. Dear Iris, I wanted to update you on something significant. I'm getting married. His name is Troy. He's kind, honest, and has been incredibly patient with my trust issues. He knows the whole story about Blake and hasn't run away, which feels like a miracle. Caleb and Mira like him. That was important. I wouldn't marry someone my children didn't feel safe with. They're 9 and 6 now, adjusted to life without Blake better than I feared. Blake still sees them occasionally, but inconsistently. The kids have learned not to count on him. It's sad, but it's honest. Better than the false reliability he pretended to provide before. I'm writing because I wanted you to know that moving on is possible. That love after betrayal is possible. That trusting, again, carefully, with the right person, is possible. Thank you for handling everything the way you did. Your exposure of Blake freed both of us. Even though it was painful. I'm grateful for that freedom now. I hope you're thriving. Simone cried reading that letter. Not from sadness but from shared relief. Simone had survived too. She'd rebuilt too. She'd found someone trustworthy too. Blake had tried to destroy both of us with his lies. Instead, we'd both survived and were building better lives. That felt like victory not over Blake, but over the trauma he'd caused. I'd written back congratulating her on the engagement, sharing my own engagement news, acknowledging that we'd both come far in 2 years. We'd never be close. Our connection was too rooted in pain. But we had mutual respect, mutual understanding, mutual appreciation for having survived something terrible. That was enough. In November, I'd attended a conference on nonprofit management. During one session on fundraising, I'd been approached by a woman I didn't recognize. Iris Chambers? I'm Catherine's sister, Catherine Morrison, Blake's first wife who died in 2016. I'd gone completely still. Blake's first wife. The woman Claire had mentioned, but I'd never researched deeply. I'm sorry for your loss, I'd said automatically. Thank you. I wanted to meet you because I saw your foundation online, the Divorce Support Fund. I wanted to contribute. That's very kind. It's not kindness. Catherine died in that accident because she was distraught about discovering Blake's lies. She found out he'd been cheating throughout their marriage, confronted him, and was driving emotionally when she crashed. I didn't know. Most people don't. Blake let everyone believe it was just a tragic accident. But I know the truth. He was lying to her the entire time they were married, just like he lied to you. And his lies contributed to her death. I'd felt sick. Blake's pattern went back further and had cost more than I'd realized. Not just emotional damage, but actual death. Your foundation helps women leave before they get to where Catherine was devastated, destroyed, unable to see a way forward. That's important work. So here, she'd handed me a check for $10,000, in Catherine's memory, so other women can escape what she couldn't. After she'd left, I'd stood in the conference hallway crying. For Catherine, for Simone, for myself, for all the women Blake had hurt over the years. And I'd renewed my commitment to the foundation. This work mattered. Not just for my own healing, but for preventing other women from suffering what Blake's lies had caused. December arrived with unexpected bittersweet reflection. Christmas again. 3 years since discovering Blake's double life. 2 years since the divorce was finalized. 1 year since starting to truly heal. Oliver and I spent Christmas quietly in our condo, exchanging thoughtful gifts and cooking together. No drama, no betrayal, no hidden families. Just honest companionship. Are you thinking about Blake? Oliver asked on Christmas Eve. A little. This time of year brings back memories of the discovery, the divorce filing, all of it. Do you regret how you handled it? Sometimes I regret the vindictiveness. Serving him divorce papers in front of Simone on Christmas Day was deliberately cruel, but I don't regret the outcome. Blake facing consequences was necessary. Cruelty isn't always wrong. Sometimes it's just consequences delivered at an inconvenient time. That's a very generous interpretation. It's a realistic one. Blake created the situation where any revelation would be devastating. You didn't make it cruel, his lies made it cruel. You just made it visible. On New Year's Eve, Oliver and I had gone to a party hosted by mutual friends. A casual gathering, nothing fancy, just good people celebrating the year ending and new one beginning. Someone had asked how we'd met. Oliver had looked at me, letting me decide how to answer. We met through mutual friends, I'd said. Both coming out of difficult divorces, both cautious about dating, both pleasantly surprised to find someone who understood trust issues. That's the diplomatic version. Oliver added. The real version is, we're both damaged people who decided to be damaged together and see what happens. Everyone had laughed. But it was true. We were damaged. And being damaged together had somehow created something healthy. At midnight, as everyone counted down to the new year, Oliver had pulled me aside. I know this year has been difficult. Rebuilding from Blake's betrayal, processing trauma, learning to trust again. But I want you to know I see you. The real you, not the performed version or the traumatized version. Just you. And I love that person. I'd kissed him, feeling something I hadn't felt since before Blake's lies were exposed. Hope. Not naive hope, that everything would be perfect, but realistic hope that good things were possible with the right person. January brought wedding planning. Nothing elaborate. We'd reserved a small venue, invited 30 people, hired a simple caterer. The focus was commitment, not performance. This is so different from how you described your first wedding, my wedding planner noted during one meeting. My first wedding was about image. This one's about substance. That's refreshingly honest. I've learned that dishonesty even about wedding planning creates problems down the line. In February, I'd received a final communication from Blake. A formal letter through his attorney. Mr. Henley wishes to inform Miss Chambers that he's remarrying and wanted to extend courtesy notice given their shared history. I'd read it twice, feeling nothing. Blake was remarrying. To someone who hopefully knew his full history. Someone who'd been warned about his patterns. Or maybe someone who hadn't been warned and was about to repeat Simone's and my experiences. I'd hoped for the former but suspected the latter. Blake was good at compartmentalizing, good at starting fresh, good at convincing new people his past was someone else's fault. Does it bother you that he's remarrying? Dr. Torres asked during our session. Not emotionally, but practically. I worry for whoever he's marrying. Does she know about the double life? The lies? The pattern? That's not your responsibility. I know. But I keep thinking if someone had warned me before I married Blake, would I have believed them? Probably not. People in love want to believe their partner is different, that previous bad behavior was circumstantial. You can't save everyone from their own choices, but I could try. You could, but at what cost to your own peace? Blake's new relationship isn't your problem to solve. She was right. Blake's future was his own. I'd done what I could, exposed his lies, protected myself, helped other women through the foundation. I couldn't also be responsible for warning everyone he might hurt in the future. That was his responsibility. And if he'd truly changed, he'd handle it. If he hadn't, his new partner would discover it eventually, just like I had. On March 15th, 3 years to the day after the restraining order hearing where Blake had been held in contempt, I'd made a decision. I was done with therapy focused on Blake and the divorce. I'm ready to move forward completely, I'd told Dr. Torres. I've processed the betrayal, rebuilt my life, found new love. I don't need to keep examining what Blake did. I need to focus on what I'm building. That's healthy. But remember, trauma can resurface. Don't hesitate to come back if you need support. I won't. But I think the worst is behind me now. I think you're right. June 15th, 3.5 years after discovering Blake's betrayal, and 2 years after our divorce finalized, I married Oliver. The ceremony was held in a garden, nothing like the traditional church wedding Blake and I had had. 30 guests, immediate family, and close friends. Simple vows focused on honesty, transparency, and mutual support. I promise to tell you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, Oliver had vowed. I promise to be exactly who I am, not a performed version. I promise to build a life with you based on reality, not fantasy. I promise to trust you while remaining myself, I'd vowed. I promise to not let past betrayal poison present love. I promise to be fully present in our relationship, not haunted by previous lies. We'd exchanged simple rings, no diamonds, just brushed silver bands engraved with honest love. At the reception, Vivienne had given a toast. 3 years ago, Iris was devastated by betrayal. She could have let that betrayal define her, make her bitter, close her off from future love. Instead, she processed it, learned from it, and used it to become someone even stronger. Oliver is a lucky man, and Iris is lucky to have found someone who understands that past pain doesn't disqualify future joy. Patricia Thornton had attended and pulled me aside afterward. You know, when you first came to my office that November morning, I thought you'd be like most betrayed spouses, angry, vindictive, wanting to maximize damage. But you were different. You wanted truth and consequences, but not cruelty for its own sake. That's why your divorce proceeded so cleanly despite Blake's attempts to complicate it. Thank you for guiding me through it. Thank you for being a client who understood that the goal wasn't destruction, it was liberation. You achieved that. Simone had sent a card with a generous check for the foundation and a note. Congratulations on finding honest love. We both deserve it. Simone, I'd cried reading it. 2 women, both betrayed by the same man, both rebuilt, both found new love, both thriving despite Blake's best attempts to destroy us. That night, lying next to Oliver as my husband, I'd thought about the journey from Blake's betrayal to this moment. 3.5 years. From devastation to divorce to healing to love. From discovering lies to demanding truth to building something real. Blake had taken 8 years of my life with his deception. But I'd taken back far more than he'd stolen. I'd taken back my ability to trust, my capacity for love, my belief that honest relationships were possible, and I'd built a foundation that was helping other women do the same. What are you thinking about? Oliver asked, pulling me closer. That Blake tried to destroy me and failed completely. I'm happy. I'm loved. I'm building good things. He wanted to keep me trapped in his lies, and instead I used his lies as a launching pad to something better. That's poetic. It's true. The papers I delivered him on Christmas Day weren't just divorce papers. They were papers declaring my independence, my refusal to accept lies anymore, my commitment to living honestly, even when honesty was painful. He deserved those papers. Yes, but more importantly, I deserved to deliver them. I deserved to take back my life, on my terms, at my timing. That's what the delivery was really about, not punishing Blake, but reclaiming myself. And have you? Reclaimed yourself? Completely. The woman Blake married was naive, trusting, willing to accept partial truths. The woman I am now demands full honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. That's not who Blake made me, it's who I became by surviving his betrayal. I love who you became. I love who you are. Not performed, not managed, not filtered. Just honest. That's worth everything to me now. We'd fallen asleep holding hands, 2 people with broken pasts building a present based on truth. The next morning, our first morning as a married couple, Oliver had made coffee and brought it to me in bed. To honest love, he'd toasted. To honest love, I'd agreed, and I'd meant it. Every word. 3.5 years after my husband spent Christmas with his real family, I'd delivered him the papers he deserved. Divorce, consequences, and an ending to 8 years of lies. But more importantly, I delivered myself something better. Freedom, healing, and a future built on truth. Blake's betrayal had tried to destroy me. Instead, it had refined me. Burned away naivety and left strength. Destroyed false trust and built careful wisdom. Ended a dishonest marriage and made space for an honest one. That was the real revenge, not his suffering, but my thriving. And 3.5 years later, standing in the life I'd rebuilt from the ruins of his lies, I could finally say, I won. Not because I'd destroyed Blake, but because he'd failed completely to destroy me.